Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and in this essay I'd like to talk about how the political class, the globalist controlled political and media class, how they can subvert the public discourse around elections and election campaigning and political messaging and so on, how they can subvert it to make sure that only the non-issues are being talked about. Now I've gone out and gone to a few political meetings, and there's folks in the street wanting to get you to vote for this or that party, and they hang around outside of public buildings and supermarkets and grocery stores, things like that. So if you want to sort of have a chat to politicians aspiring or current, and talk about what they're doing, then now's the time to do it, sort of during election campaign. Now, I guess if you look at the various surveys and so on that are done, there are the top 5 things that concern people in Australia, at least, and I think elsewhere. Mass immigration. The questions are, well, why do we need it? Why is it being forced on us? Why are we not being asked? Why is there not being a referendum or a vote on it? That sort of thing. The cost of living, how it's going up, inflation, the cost of housing, how that's increasing far ahead of wages, the sending of jobs offshore, and why prospects for young people are so hopeless going into the future. I don't think there's been a young generation coming out that's had such bleak future prospects as the current generation. Certainly not for a good 90 plus years. So those are the things that are concerning people, but you wouldn't know it. The politicians don't talk about it. There's maybe 1 or 2 of the smaller parties that even mention it as an issue. What they do to reduce, the ones that say they'd address the mass immigration as a case in point, just talk about there should be a greater emphasis on skilled migration rather than just letting people come in en masse. I guess that's an improvement of the way things are, but really no one's talking about it now. Yet non-issues are being talked about, so, and emotional non-issues. So as I'm going around, I was going into the supermarket a few days ago, and there's yet another political party out there. These guys are quite left-leaning, and they're hangers-on and flunkies. They're also quite. I don't know how they got that many people mobilised to come out and sort of hand out information leaflets, but the information leaflets are nothing. We believe in black rights, we believe in transgender lesbians, and we believe in climate change, and it's just globalist talking points. And if you look at really the 4 biggest parties in Australia, either the ones that will hold government or will share government with another party in some form of coalition, all of them subscribe to all of the issues of the global, like the top 10 talking points of you look at Davos, the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. The top 10 talking points there are the platform of every one of these parties. Now, 2 of the 4 main parties in Australia maybe aren't as enthusiastic about it as the other 2, but they're still signed on. So all their policies are mass immigration, black, brown, peasant immigration to the West, or to Australia in this case. Continuing to allow the cost of living situation to deteriorate, the global warming thing, which would see an astronomical price increase in energy and oil and gasoline and all that sort of stuff. So get further pressure on standards of living. So we're going to make sure there are transgender bathrooms everywhere, and all this sort of stuff, all this useless, wasteful stuff that achieves nothing, produces nothing, creates nothing, and other than jobs for gender studies, lesbians or something. But none of the issues that are important to people are being discussed. or being mentioned in platforms. Similarly, there's no policies. There's vague feel-goodism. We'll tackle climate change, zero emissions, and we'll stop harassment by white supremacist Hitler, and vague things, and inventing dangers that don't exist. They might as well say cannibals from Mars are going to arrive tomorrow, but we're going to stop it because we're hairy-chested heavyweights. They just invent these bullshit things that don't exist, and then say they're taking stern measures to solve it. There's violence against women everywhere, and there's children are being abused, and there's racism everywhere. Hitler is everywhere, but online abuse of vulnerable people. We're going to stop it, Hitler. And this is the sort of thing they just keep on and on about. But none of the key things that people, the voters, really want addressed, none of that is spoken about, as if those problems didn't exist. Every problem, every challenge, every drama is invented, confected, manufactured. There are outrage bots online that gin it all up to make out as if there's real grassroots concern about it, but there isn't. But the things that people are really, real people are concerned about, no one's talking about. Now, I went to a couple of political meetings where politicians, usually from smaller parties, but also from a couple of the bigger ones, were there talking, but they weren't really talking policy. These are our policies to solve these real problems. This is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to fix the situation. Now, some of these smaller parties aren't going to form government, so they can really say what they want, and they're not going to be held accountable. But even so, so you're at a political meeting, and there's maybe a few candidates there getting up and saying their piece. Of the one I went to, only one actually had a policy document, had a policy booklet, what their policies were. None of the others had that. Again, they had sort of bullet point headline feel-goodism stuff like zero emissions and build back better, and they had those type of sloganeering stuff. But no, there hadn't been any heavy lifting on policy, or none they prepared to talk about. None of them were prepared to talk about reducing immigration. Some just refused to talk about it point blank. And there's also special interest politicians, like one, for example. I'm not saying this was or wasn't the discourse, but one politician says, and I was raped once, so I'm going to start the special. I started the special anti-rape party to make sure rapes never happen. That type of stuff. So I don't know why you'd bother to do this. Someone's funding them, of course, but it'll be interesting to see who's paying for it. Some were nervous about, so I'm funding my own campaign. No, you're not. What bullshit. But this is how you subvert a public discourse. You make sure that the issues that people are really concerned about never get talked about. The media don't talk about it, and the political class don't talk about it. The outside parties may talk about it, but they're very nervous about, because they know that if they come out and say, well, we're going to reduce immigration substantially to make sure that only English-speaking people with qualifications are brought in, then they'd be pilloried as being Hitler and Nazi and fascist. You know how it goes. So I was at one where they plant people in the audience. So it's like when Hillary Clinton was doing her supposed town hall. And, the little girl over there, Mrs. Clinton, I want you, Donald Trump, many people are scared of Donald Trump because he's a Nazi. What are you going to do to stop Nazis? And you get that sort of planted person that magically gets called upon to ask a question. Now, you see this sort of everywhere, and this is a bit how it's subverted. And so, in one meeting, this is like a town hall type meeting. So somebody gets up. No one is asking about policy, which is odd to me. I don't understand that. But what are you going to do to fix this real problem? There's not a problem that applies to the whole nation or many people in it. Those sort of questions don't seem to come up. Now, clearly, some of the people are planted in there. No question of that. But it's it amazes me how easily they can subvert the discourse in the meeting and change the line of questioning. So someone will get up and say, well, I'm a single mother and I've got a black, lesbian, transgender adopted daughter and she's got a problem with it, and I want to know how you're going to help me. And so that's the question that comes up. Now, that's a very unique, specific, just to her specific circumstances. Now, in spite of having this incredible sort of, the person to look at, and I can't leave her even for a minute, so I can't work out. Well, what are you doing here at the meeting then? How are you able to come here if you couldn't leave her for a minute? And I don't follow all that. So anyway, she's there and asked that question. But once that sort of question gets asked, a personal pain story and question, it's more of the personal pain story, because I seem to spend a long time talking about personal pain. What do you do about it? Then that changes the line of question. So then other people, particularly women, will get up and say, well, I've got 2 black lesbians, and you, what are you going to do about me? And then someone else comes, well, I've got 10 black lesbian children, what are you going to do about me? And so everything then becomes a personal pain story or question about how are you going to help that person, not how you're going to solve problems that affect everybody or nearly everybody, but how you're just going to. So clearly those people are planted in there to ask those questions, which then direct the line of questioning away from the real issues. So now there were some people at one meeting said that the COVID lockdowns had been overdone and unnecessary and had caused much harm and damage and so on, which you couldn't deny. That's an accurate assessment. But the damage has been done. I don't know how they're going to solve the damage other than throwing money at it. The best thing to do is get everyone back to work as quickly as possible. But so there's another question in there. Oh, so you're saying nobody died. You're a science denier. You're a science denier. You must be a Nazi. So so these agitators and people are sent in to undermine. So really, even though the Q&A session went for probably close on 2 hours, I guess, I don't think there was one question that would have applied universally, as in, I think, what are you going to do immigration? What are you going to do about the cost of housing? What are you going to do about the cost of living? Those sorts of things, which are the biggest issues on the minds of voters. I don't think there's any questions along those lines. And I could have jumped up and asked those questions, but to me, I wanted to see what will happen naturally. How will this flow without somebody like me who's understands at least some of these issues getting up and changing the course that it would take. So really, with these things, it needs to be involved citizens that understand enough of the issues to be able to go along and ask the serious, hard questions. And when you've got a democracy, there's always a situation, or I think there's always a situation where you need to ask who will ask the questions, because that's, in essence, what democracy is about. People can ask the questions, and the current political and media class is doing everything they can to shut down any legitimate question, whether it's blaming, shaming, or just kicking you off social media. It doesn't matter. This is what they're doing. And it isn't taking much effort on their behalf to do it. They send a few agitators to each political meeting to make sure that the serious questions don't get asked. And that's how they subvert the public discourse. They don't even need to cheat at elections or be creative with the ballot counting or something like that. They can actually do it at that level, which prevents groundswell support for the smaller parties. And the only thing the smaller parties can do is fight back to make sure they've got their plants in the audience who do ask that key questions about immigration, cost of living and so on, energy costs. So they can then also have a chance of controlling the discourse. Because when you've got an open public meeting, you can't really control who comes in. The big parties, the media, the agitators, the NGOs, they've all got their people in there. But the folks who are actually trying to get the public to vote for them, they don't have their agitators there. They're naive and well-meaning and so on, but they need to wise up and understand that the game is heavily rigged against them. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.